Story 1. I was waiting outside, and while it was getting cold, I burned my pants. This happened in Argentinian winter. For a little bit of context, most normal houses here use a propane house heating system. They work just fine, but in order to work they have to have an external system that takes oxygen from the exterior and releases toxic fumes out of the house. They're attached to a wall and at pretty low height. Since the air that they release is hot, that metal exhaust gets really hot. That's why most houses, in order to prevent people getting burned by it, install a small metal cage that covers that exhaust and won't get really hot. This story involves an unprotected outside metal exhaust in a wall outside at 50 centimeters. My GF and I walked down 10 blocks in our populated neighborhood. It was a very cold day at 3 p.m. I had the flu that day, so my sense of smell was not existent. We had to see a lady that sells nice-looking jewelry and lingerie for very cheap. Since it was something that my GF was interested to buy, and I'm very bad at helping her choose those kind of things, I said I just wanted to stay outside the house, no biggie. She kind of took her time, and even though I was wearing warm clothes, I was starting to get freeze outside, especially my bottom cheeks. That's when I saw that metal exhaust I was talking about. I approached it and sensed from afar that it was warm Sue. I had the brilliant idea of sending my butt there, not on it, but over it. It felt really warm and cozy. I stayed there for only 3 mins when my GF and the lady came outside with products in hand saying their goodbyes. She closed the door, but as soon as we were starting to leave, my GF notices the smell of something burnt, and since she saw me earlier standing over the exhaust, my GF told me to turn around, and that's when we found out that my pants had burnt. A pretty big burnt hole in my pants. They were 30% cotton, 70% polyester, so the plastic part if it melted easily. Since I had nothing to cover it, and we didn't want to bother that woman, well, I had to walk 10 blocks in a crowded neighborhood with a big burnt hole in my pants, laughing all the way back home. We threw them as soon as we got home. Yes, don't underestimate the calorific power of apparently barely warm metal. Story 2. I messed up by drinking a coffee before I drove to work. I drink coffee every day. I have a 6-month-old baby and couldn't function without a little bit of caffeine. There was a bad storm in the area last night that left over 200,000 people without power, so I had to go into work to make sure everything was back up after a power outage. I'm a general manager at a restaurant. On my way to work, I started to feel like I had to go to the bathroom. I was on a fairly busy road and the traffic signals were out due to the power outage. All the businesses around were also without power. I tried to hold it for as long as I could, but I knew if I didn't figure something out, I was going to shit my pants. I ended up pulling to a side road and squatting behind another car and shitting in a bag. Thankfully, I also had some baby wipes with me and only 2 or 3 cars drove by and maybe saw something. TL Doctor, so yeah, today I fucked up by drinking coffee before work and almost shitting my pants. Maybe I will wait to drink my coffee until I get to work next time. Story 3. I messed up by answering my phone angrily due to spammers. Many people on Reddit know how rough the job market is for candidates right now. It's probably the worst situation I have ever seen in my lifetime. My current company has been struggling since I joined almost 3 years ago, and I decided mid-June to start trying to find a new opportunity in order to avoid going down with a sinking ship. I've had lots of interviews and I am in the process with 5 companies right now, some of them close to offer stage. But I still spend some time every day applying to new job positions just in case everything somehow falls through. I haven't wasted time and am back at square one. I've gotten so many rejections that I stopped keeping track of which jobs I've applied to and just double check I don't have an email from them or an account with whatever ATS system they use before submitting a second time. If I get an email showing interest, I will then spend a bunch of time studying the company before my initial screening call. Anyway, that is the context. This morning I have been running around doing errands, work, riding my bike, and preparing for a really long presentation I have to give for one of the companies I am in the latter stages with. I am at an executive level and these interview processes can be extremely grueling. but I feel pretty prepared and had finished most of the stuff I needed to do before working and getting my final prep in. Last thing to do was lunch, which I started making before I started receiving a bunch of those annoying pig butchering scam texts saying, "Oops, wrong number." This started to put me in a annoyed mood, and then I got a call from an unknown number which I declined. I normally just send all unknown calls to voicemail, but since I have been in this interviewing process, I turned that off and manually send them there. Well, as soon as I did that, the same number called back. This happens to me from time to time, and I normally either just decline again, or if I've seen the number doing this a lot recently, will answer and try to angrily get them to remove me from their list. So here's what went down. I picked up the call, and I didn't just answer it. I unleashed the most furious, blood-curdling scream you could imagine by blurting the word what. I'm talking full-on rage mode, like I just found out they canceled my favorite anime or something. Honestly, it was like summoning the power of 1,000 angry cats. The lady on the other end responded with, "I am calling about a job you applied for." My mind still set on scammers. I continued probing. Which job, which company? Turns out it was a VP level job I applied to with a decent salary range that I would probably be interested in. I apologized and tried to explain why I answered the call that way. She was clearly taken aback, but seems okay proceeding anyway. Asked me if it was still a good time. Not sure what still means since I never agreed to this time. I said not really, since I was in the process of operating the stove and have too much to do before this presentation, but suggested I could connect later in the business day or on Monday. She said Monday works, and we agreed to a time that I don't even remember because I was so embarrassed for yelling at her when I picked up the phone. Story 4.
Today I messed up falling asleep in the bath. So I, 17F, just became the biggest dumbass within a 1-mile radius. To set the story, I, like most other teenagers, am incredibly sleep deprived. Usually my weekly naps make up for my lost sleep, but occasionally my habits bite me in the ass. Exhibit 1, I fell asleep during a pre-calculus test, and then not only did I drool all over my test, upon waking up, I fell out of my chair as my teacher startled me awake. It was absolutely mortifying, to say the least. Exhibit 2, I fell asleep at my great-grandmother's funeral. I was the last one sitting in the pews, snoring in front of my Grammy. However, this recent situation was somehow worse than the 2 others. It was earlier in this evening, and I decided to run myself a bath. It's been a long week. It's only Wednesday, and a nice warm bath is the perfect band-aid to my ailments. Like normal, I got in the bath while it was halfway full and left the faucet on to finish filling the tub. The water was so warm, like a massive hug from a warm body that was assuring me that everything was going to be okay. My eyelids stopped opening as much, and all of a sudden, I must have fallen asleep. It was one of those naps where you don't even realize you fell asleep. What felt like only a few minutes later, my eyes popped open and I realized that I had fucked up big time. The damn water was still running and my bathroom looked more like a swamp. My bath mats were soaked and my trash can ... was on its side. Wait a minute, the water was only an inch or so deep. Why was my bathroom looking like a tornado had hit? That's when I heard it, the faint but clearly pissed off meow from my cat. I had let him into the bathroom while I was going to bathe because he likes how warm and steamy it gets. I looked up and his whole bottom half was wet and he was staring claws at me. The water must have overflowed and he somehow got wet in the process and knocked my trash can over. You might think that the story can't get much worse, but I promise that someone must have had it out for me today because holy fuck. I drained my bath and went to grab myself a towel when the cruel reality of the situation set in. Today was laundry day. My towels were upstairs in the laundry room. My first thought was to call my mother or sister to get me a towel, but it was just my luck that the 2 of them had left to go to my sister's doctor's appointment. I sat in that stupid puddle of a bathroom with my puddle of a cat for a solid 45 minutes while my mother and sister laughed their way through the appointment and the drive home. Thankfully, everything is dry now and my bath mats are in the dryer. Unfortunately for my cat, though, he hates the blow dryer and it's unethical to throw him in the dryer, so he is still quite damp.
Story 5. Today I messed up by challenging my fiancé to a swimming race and ending up in hurt. Today my fiancé, 24 female, and I, 25 male, were talking about getting active again and somehow got on the topic of swimming. We both used to swim competitively years ago, so we thought it would be fun to hit up our local gym's pool. Of course, it quickly turned into a challenge, a 100-meter freestyle followed by a 400-meter individual medley, and whoever won the individual medley would get to pick the last race. So we get to the gym, and I start warming up in the hot tub for about 10 minutes. Then I hopped into the lap pool for a few laps about 10 minutes before we started racing. As the race came to a close, I quickly realized how out of shape I am. It was way more exhausting than I remembered. We finished at the same time, though I'm pretty sure I won, but she thinks otherwise. After the race, I was feeling super winded, so I sat in the water for about 10 minutes, hoping I'd catch my breath. But I kept feeling worse. I decided to get out and call it a day, sitting on the poolside for another 10 to 15 minutes, expecting to feel better. But nope. I felt dizzy, fatigued, had a slight headache at the back of my head near my neck, and my eyes felt like they were sinking in. My fiancé went to change while I tried to pull my shit together. We left the gym, and I was still feeling weak and dizzy, like a weird drunk dizzy. My fiancé had to drive us home because I was in no condition, which didn't help my pride or body at all. Was feeling a bit tingly all over and mouth was dry. Once we got home, I told her I needed to sit in the car for a minute to get a grip on reality. Leaned my seat back and bam, felt 100% worse. Sat up, door open, and out came my late lunch from 5 hours ago. After that, I felt a bit better, though still not great. Story 6.
Today I messed up by jumping a fence trying to save my dog. Last night I, 36, female, messed up big time. Where to start? I took my rescue dog to the local nature reserve at around 6:30 last night after I'd fed my children and they were chilling with my housemate. I've had my beagle since Nov 23 and he is almost 4. He's a very good boy but occasionally has poor recall and can be shouty when on a leash. I'm somewhat new to the area and it is a very friendly town on the outskirts of the city. I met a guy at the shops after talking about my shouty beagle and that we both work in construction. He is local and I offered him to join me as I felt like company. We walked around 20 mins in and when we were at a peaceful spot, I let my dog off lead to have some fun. He was a very good boy and was going and coming every few minutes. When I was ready to leave to go home, I put his leash on and we walked a further 5 mins. He started getting whiny and pulling. I'd only been out around an hour at this point. I thought, what's the harm letting him off again until we got closer to the road? LOL. This is where the fuck up began. He darted into some thick brambles and starting scrapping with a fox. Me and the guy were close to him and calling him to come out. No avail. We realized that there was a thin but sturdy 6 feet metal fence and that even more brambles were beyond the fence. I do have an air tag on my dog, but even if I didn't, you could clearly hear that he was the other side of the fence. After an hour of hearing the dog barking in pain, trying to find his way wherever he crawled through, it was starting to get darker. We walked the perimeter, but there was impossible access, being covered by thick brambles on both sides of the fence, which by then discovered that it's actually the back of the secondary school that my son, 11 years old, will be attending. The guy knew the area very well and attended this same school. We were having laughs and jokes throughout this time. I got to the point where I'd been out for over 2 hours and started panicking a bit as today first is my last ever uni submission. I have a complete draft that I've been working on, but it nowhere near to submission ready. I said that I wanted to go home, hoped the dog found his way back, and or call the caretaker, then we heard him cry awfully loud. We had a heated discussion about the options and I decided to find an opening and climb the fence with the thoughts of getting him and trying to either get him out or find the caretaker. The guy offered to go instead of me, but I have anxiety and couldn't bear the thought of waiting and another person doing something like that for me. I also have PTSD. He helped prop me up, and at the top were closely spaced thin, sturdy metal green bars. I quickly realized I couldn't sit on it to lever myself down. I knew it was a bad idea, but I was committed, and this guy was holding me up by my arse. I slowly balanced on the top, and just went for it. I had no other choice really, it was jump or fall at this point. I felt the impact immediately and fell backwards into some spiky bushes. At first we laughed, I shifted over slightly, and the guy hopped over with much more ease than me. Then I started crying. It hurt so bad, and I've had 2 children. I've never sprained an ankle, or anywhere else. I've never broken a bone in my body. I danced for more of my life than I didn't, and I've always been fairly active, often hopping fences in my younger days. Elmo, I feel so old. I couldn't put any weight on my foot, and after inspection, gathered it was likely a sprain as I couldn't feel any protrusions of bone. I sobbed, which was probably a combination of a panic attack and shock, and asked him to look for dog. No avail. We could hear him occasionally trying to find a way through the brambles and crying, and kept calling him whilst I sat on the floor feeling like a massive dickhead. After this the mood was pain, laughter, frustration, swearing about the dog, trying to hobble in pain, or the guy trying to give me a piggyback, which I accepted twice, but the first time he nearly toppled us over as the ground was so uneven. After much failure, crying and taking the piss out of the situation, I decided to call an ambulance. Yes, they did laugh at my ashamed ass. After some holding, the diagnosis was, it sounds sprained, and you either find a way out, or you are so down the list of priority that this could take hours. Fuck that. I have an assignment to finish, and I've worked hard as a single parent to get to the end of it in 4.5 years, whilst working full-time and dealing with mental illness. I was determined to get out, cue more wailing from me about how much this situation sucks so hard. I decided crawling was the only way forward, ensue hysterical laughter from my newfound friend. I told him to fuck off whilst crying and laughing myself. We were halfway through our escape plan, which was to head to the main gates to at least allow a little access, then through the back of the school, which was being used as a large garden area. They even had beehive and 4 giant greenhouses with long rows of veggie in between air-gyage and the slugs I touched and crawled on. So we were halfway and I start wailing again, flipping backwards onto the damp dusk grass. It was getting really dark. The guy had to shine the way with his phone torch, and who pops up but the fucking dog. The tears stopped immediately, ensue many doggy cuddles, high fives and laughter. Okay, he came back, yay, it wasn't all for nothing. I'd been texting my housemate at intervals, and we wanted doggy home. Now I really did need to get out. It was like 10:30. I bum-shuffled, walked on all fours next to the dog, walked on my knees, hopped and leaned on the guy, until we reached the first set of gates out. We managed to squeeze through by pulling the gate as far as the chain would allow. Yay, piggyback time on the tarmac ed car park. Right next, the main entrance gate to the school. The gate had metal nooks and crannies plus an electrical box on the other side of the fence. We wondered how to get the dog over, and I found a wide L-shaped gap that he could fit through. Okay, time to get me over the fence first. I managed to climb on his hunched over back and scoot onto a metal bar that was wide enough for my injured leg. My friend then says that I would fit through the gap, so he lifted me down and I bloody fit through. Dog through. He hopped over, Uber the 5 mins home, and I've been in immense pain since. My ankle is a balloon. My assignment is due in 1 hour, 36 mins. I should have just let him poop in the garden. Wish me luck. I'm going to finish this damn assignment, then my friend will drive me to a E. Pray it isn't broken, because I'm going on my first holiday around since before COVID and driving to France. Please pray I can drive. Edit. It's broken.